You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, fidgeting with something in the background, is Skyler Timmons.
I'm trying to put on an ankle brace.
What did you do to your ankle?
You know, I wish I knew.
We call that the being in our 30s injury.
I'm not in my 30s for another month.
Yeah, it's coming regardless.
It'll happen to you.
I used to be with it, then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what's it is strange and confusing to me.
Mm-hmm. No, it's one of those things where I was driving home, and then I got home one day, earlier this week, and then as soon as I stepped out of the car, just excruciating pain in my ankle.
You know what I got to recommend to you, and I will this is hashtag not sponsored, but as a man in my mid-30s, I also have many various aches and pains, and I recommend TheraIce wraps and treatment coverages. They're just like little gel packs covered in cloth or whatever. You throw it in the freezer, and then you've got a nice little ice wrap for whatever ails you. They do it for knees, ankles, elbows. I've got one for headaches that's actually really pretty good. But yeah, there's a tip for all you out there.
There you go. And if they ever want to sponsor, we're handing out stuff out for free at the moment as a free sample. Speaking
of handing things out, I don't know. I couldn't think of a segue to come up with that.
It works. Roster spots.
The Colorado Rockies are officially underway for the 2026 season, and the big thing that comes with that is the final announcement of the opening day 26-man roster. When last we chatted, Skyler, we knew most of the roster going in, but there were still a couple things left to be decided.
Yeah, it was mostly the bullpen. We knew everything else. We were just waiting on the finalization of who's going to get the final bullpen spots. It was kind of came down to like three guys battling for two spots. And, well, we got our answer to those.
Yeah, ultimately it was Seth Halverson in the bullpen left off of the opening day roster. He was optioned to Triple-A Albuquerque. And, you know, this isn't a surprising move for me. So Halverson ended his season on injury. He had what we thought was potentially a Tommy John or UCL scare, ended up being a flexor strain, but he missed the end of the season due to injury, and then he just didn't look as sharp as we're used to seeing him during spring training. Very wild command, not really hitting his spots, and I think ultimately it's probably the best move to send him down to Triple-A for some low-stakes ball where he can just continue to work on getting himself back to where he was previously.
Yeah, and I think he kind of fell into the trap a lot of the other pitchers where you're working on things in spring training, and I think just it wasn't clicking for him. When you're trying to force the issue, making some pitches work, and in a way it can start affecting everything else. So, yeah, good for him to head down to Triple-A, and that's kind of the advantage the Rockies have this year, Evan, especially with a lot of the guys in those bullpen, is just because he starts the season in Triple-A, that's not where he's going to end the season. Halverson's going to come back up. He's going to be a fresh arm for the big league squad. Guys will get overrun. You need a fresh arm. They need a breather. You can bring him up. That's the advantage the Rockies, I think, are going to use their bullpen is all these young arms. It's going to take everybody. So Halverson, get yourself right down in Triple-A. I think you already got one save on opening night for the Isotopes. So we know what Halverson can do. But yeah, he just got wild during spring training and just couldn't settle in. Go get right down in with the Isotopes.
Yeah, and so then the final two bullpen spots that we figured we knew who they were going to go to, but they end up going to Zach Agnos, who had a fabulous spring and already made his debut for the season and looked fantastic. And then Jaden Hill, who had a little bit of a bumpy spring, but overall was pretty solid.
Yeah, it was kind of towards the tail end of spring training when the Hill kind of really started to settle in and made that nice little push. So spring training, his slider was looking really good and everything. So and he quietly had a really good year last year with the Rockies in his brief stint. But there would be those times when you'd see Jaden Hill come to the mountain, you're like, oh yeah, he is on the big league roster. No, at points because he was just so quietly would come in, get his outs, and leave. And so a sneaky good year, and I think he can settle into that bullpen spot. No, for hold it for however long he can, and get put in some key situations. Fortunate
Yeah,
kind of wasn't able to lock it down the day he did come in, but yeah, it's all right.
yeah, it's the first appearance of the year, and it's tough because Jaden Hill really did end up being a very quietly, like you said, important part of the bullpen last year. In made 28 appearances, and he had like a 3.38 ERA, which is good, is really good,
Yeah,
especially for a young reliever who did not start as a reliever and has missed significant time due to injury throughout his young career so far. And that's exactly what you want to see. And then you've got Zach Agnos, who fabulous spring and has already turned in an inning and a third with two strikeouts without giving up a run. It's really just one of those things where for this young Rockies bullpen, we talked about it a bit last week. It's weird because we end up with a handful of true relievers, and then we also end up with Chase Dolander and Antonio Senzatela in the bullpen, who are listed as long relief, but it's only a matter of time until at least one of those two guys is starting games.
yeah, yeah, and it's that mix of then you have your veterans of Jimmy Herget is going to keep doing his thing, and Brendan Bernardino as the lone lefty. You're going to rely on him a good bit to get out of some sticky situations, especially against lefties. And you get that mix. So that's where those young guys you have to cycle in. Juan Mejia, Jaden Hill, Zach Agnos, Victor Vodnik. Like this is a squad of guys that you're going to have to cycle through, just because, like you said, that we've got two long guys in the pen. Now, can you throw a Chase Dolander out there for an inning? Yeah, of course you can, one or two innings, but you're going to rely heavily. You're not going to bring him in with runners first and second, two outs. No, you're going to go to somebody else like a Juan Mejia to try and get you out of a jam and then get through the next inning. So you're going to need all hands on deck with Halverson down in Triple-A with some of those other relievers. And, along with the guys on the big league roster now, it's going to take some mixing and matching type of thing. Because I think that's the thing too, Evan, like we briefly talked about last week of there's no closer. No, that's going to be a pitch by committee. Vodnik's going to be your prototypical closer. He's going to get those opportunities more often than not. But it's situation, so everybody's got to be ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, and the Rockies did a good job at stashing people in the minors this year as well, where you've got Valente Belloso, who was a minor league signing. He is now being stretched out to start down in Triple-A Albuquerque as a cheap, controllable, and young guy who can both start and come from the bullpen. And we already know he's a guy that Alon Leishman really likes from his time in Miami. Keegan Thompson, the waiver claim, was designated for assignment, but he ended up, clearing waivers and accepting the outright assignment through Triple-A Albuquerque as well. Parker Mashinsky stayed on a minor league contract. And there's a couple guys that I'm kind of sad to see go. John Brebbia was released, and he went and just signed with the Minnesota Twins actually today. But overall, I feel like the depth right now is pretty good.
Yeah. It's like you always have two approaches to depth, and we'll probably get to it when we talk a little bit more about the isotopes later on in the show. But it's depth of just having bodies you can rely on without having to throw your young guys to the wolves right away out of desperation. Like it's good to have those options of, well, he's thrown a pitch at the big league level before. We can rely on him. They're the expendables. Like, it's okay if they come up and they get shelled because, well, we're not banking our future on that guy, type of thing. But yeah, it's that pitching in general, especially that bullpen, how that bullpen shapes out over the course of the year. It's going to be really interesting to see because we've seen it before in previous years, and we'll talk about that Miami series later. But Rockies have had a history of recent history of running the bullpen into the ground in the first month or so, and then it's just a ticking time bomb of I hope they can hold up.
Yeah, and that's always a bummer. But I think so far the way that they've gone about having depth throughout the roster is pretty good. And on the big league roster is, I think, pretty well filled out. Um, we already discussed the position players. No real major surprises there, other than the fact that Tyler Freeman did end up on the 10-day injured list. So Troy Johnston got that roster spot, as was expected at the time. And then
And
the other
deservedly
one,
so.
yeah, he had a very good spring. And then the other one was that, you know, when we recorded last week, Braxton Fulford had just been optioned back to Triple-A Albuquerque, with Brett Sullivan having won the backup catcher role in camp. But then in his final game of Cactus League action, Mickey Moniak sprained his finger and is now on the injured list. And so he got Braxton Fulford, welcome back, almost immediately. And he's already popped in a couple ways, mostly as a pinch hitter and defensive substitution.
Yeah, and it's the joke of Mickey jammed his finger diving back into the bag, and they took him out as extreme precaution. He probably could have finished that game, and maybe it's just extra rest so they don't try to force the issue and keep him for the year. You can hold him out for the 10-day IL and let that finger just kind of loosen up, get back into working position. But it's just funny. We're not worried about it. Immediately goes on the IL.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to our beloved Rockies. Of, you know, we really don't think the injury is that bad. Whoops, his arm is detached from his body.
Whoop, never mind. It's not looking good.
But on the bright side, Moniak is expected to be the only miss those 10 days. He's expected to be back in time for the Rockies home opener against the Phillies on April 3rd, which is great. Tyler Freeman also expected back relatively soon. Also starting the year on the injured list was Zach Veen. Veen suffered a knee contusion at some point in camp and ended up on the injured list. Both Veen and Freeman are expected to potentially go on a rehab assignment to Triple-A this week here. I think he's actually supposed to start today or tomorrow at time of recording.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw the lineup for Albuquerque, so there was no Veen or Freeman or anything. But
Today,
it's
in terms of when this episode is going up,
there you go.
I should have said.
Well, then it's
Uh,
Monday. Are they playing Monday?
it
Maybe they
says
are.
it says on the update the week of the 30th.
Oh, sometime.
At some point in the near future, they will be
There we
playing
go.
baseball.
We could say that about anybody on this roster.
That is true, except
But
for Chris Bryant.
yes. Also, Blaine Krim, like we knew, placed on that injured list. Still hadn't played really any spring training with that oblique. And boy, howdy, may that come back to haunt him, depending on how things go with a certain rookie first baseman that we'll touch on. But I think a big one too, Evan, that kind of sucks is that RJ Pettit, got the Tommy John surgery, and he's on the 60-day IL now, and will miss the year. It's kind of a tough break for him, but also kind of fortuitous with just Rockies roster personnel.
The bright side with Pettit landing on the 60-day and getting Tommy John, I'm not saying it's a good thing, and I feel for Pettit because it's a rough recovery, and you know, you and I both know, having watched the sport for a long time, that he's probably not even going to be back to normal at the start of next season. Even if everything goes according to plan, it takes you a while to, you know, find your rhythm again. But for the Rockies, it's really good because it means that they don't have to worry about giving him back, especially when he's a player that this front office liked enough to claim the Rule 5 draft from Detroit and does have a lot of interesting stuff about him, so that we can be like, all right, you're on the roster. We don't have to worry about giving you back, and you don't have to worry about going back. Focus on getting healthy. We'll see you next year.
Yeah. And we'll see and hope you can stick for 90 days next season when you do come back, and then you can be part of this organization for a little bit longer beyond that. But it kind of sucks there, but like you mentioned, at least you get to keep him around and you don't have to, you can work with him and he can learn the ins and outs of the organization, learn some other things while he rehabs and does all this other stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the Rockies, they start the season with a pretty lengthy injured list. You had Krim, like you mentioned, Freeman and Veen, RJ Pettit, McCade Brown, who made his debut last year, has been dealing with shoulder inflammation. He's working his way back, but we don't really know when he's going to be here. Pearson Ole needed Tommy John surgery. Jeff Criswell still recovering. And then, of course, Chris Bryant, that's not a surprise to anybody. But for the Rockies to start with, 8 guys on the injured list to start the season, including, 3 on the 60-day, is a little rough. But
yeah, multiple pitchers.
I mean, unfortunately, that's just baseball, especially when it comes to pitcher injuries.
Yeah, as a baseball man once said, that's baseball.
I don't know. It's a bummer. But overall, the Rockies opening day roster looks pretty good. We've seen a lot of these guys already. We're slowly making our way through. I am really interested to see how, the rest of the first really few weeks of the season play out. We'll talk about the series against the Marlins here coming up in our second segment. But for a lot of these guys, it's going to be the game results themselves don't really matter as much as what they start to do coming out of the gate. And for a lot of and it's not just the rookies and the young guys, it's going to be your veterans, your Willie Castros, your Edouard Julians. It's pretty much everybody on this roster except for, I don't know, Jimmy Herget has something to prove coming into this year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good old Jimmy Herget. He got his proven done last year.
Mm-hmm. No, it's nothing but a free ride for that weird throwing man.
The human glitch. I'm glad to have him back, though. Overall, I'm really pretty pleased with the opening day lineup. What are your final thoughts on the opening day roster, Skyler?
It's just, I think the thing that people keep in mind is just because it's the opening day roster, it's not going to be the consistent roster throughout the year. It's going to ebb and flow. No, there'll be guys that aren't here in a month. Could be the possibility. There's injuries, all kinds of stuff. So it's just ever changing. As exciting as it is to get on the opening day roster, when you get to the big leagues, that's the most important thing. And you can stick at the big league level and get up there and contribute. That's even more important. It doesn't, as long as you get there, that's what matters most, not when you get there. Not if you don't get, I don't know what I'm saying. It's just important that you get there.
Yeah. And it's going to be one of those things where, same as last year, this lineup, this roster could look very different when we get to the trade deadline, when we get to the All-Star break, when we get to May even. There's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of shuffling as the Rockies experiment and try to establish that new foundation that they are looking for heading into the 2026 season.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the opening day roster. That's the bits and bobs as we head into the regular season. And then we are going to take a quick break. And we come back, it's time to actually talk about those first few games of the regular season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. Skyler, we have got our first 3 games of the regular season said and done with. And our first 3 losses of the regular season said and done with.
Only 118 to go.
Yeah, the Rockies unfortunately get swept by the Miami Marlins over their first 3 games. All 3 of those games are 1-run losses. I admit that I was getting a little frustrated throughout this. I've been one of those guys, I preach patience. I preach it's the opening series of a very new look team, all new coaches, mostly new players. And the Rockies, we all know, are still going to be bad this year. But man, those one-run losses still hurt, especially because those were all winnable games, each and every one of those.
Yeah, and it just stacks on when it's on the road. So a place they already struggle, and it's against the Marlins, who we've had some pretty embarrassing losses over the last couple of years. Some games with them. It's, you know, the Marlins were the ones who broke Ryan Feltner a couple of years ago. Uh, it's just frustrating a lot of the time. But no, it kind of goes back to one thing on pitching, and we'll focus on that. But it's the hitting, it's the offense. No, with Rockies pitching, we know how it's going to be like. We have in an image of our mind, we know what pitching for the Rockies is going to look like. And we've come to kind of accept that or anticipate that. It's when the offense is still bad and not productive is what drives me nuts, because it's a team that should be one of the best offensive teams in the league. Just how they should make themselves up to be. And it's still just a whole lot of nothing, no matter who gets plugged in there and whatnot and the changes. For some reason, I think there's a curse on the Rockies name that you put on that purple uniform and you can't hit. You can't get the big hit.
Yeah, and that's what's been so frustrating is that the Rockies in their opening series didn't have that bad of a time at the plate in general. They got hits. They weren't the best. That they had 19 hits, 2 home runs. They had a couple doubles, but it just really ended up that they weren't getting the big hits, the drive and the runs. So many missed opportunities where they start the season now 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position, including going 1 for 12 in the Sunday finale, where the Rockies lost 4-3 on a walk-off home run, but they had multiple opportunities to put that game away. The seventh inning started with 2 runners on and nobody out, and they eventually advanced on a double steal to second and third, and nobody scored.
Yeah, that's the lack of clutch, I think, is the big thing, because they preach contact, which is good. It's good to make contact, but is an effort to get contact turning into overaggression? I think we saw a lot of that with players that we're used to seeing. Ezekiel Tovar, who had a home run in the series, has swung a good bat at times, but still sneaks back into those big situations. What is the approach with guys in scoring position? Are they trying to do too much at times? Is Ezekiel Tovar trying to be a hero, but then on an 0-2 pitch down the way, we know what he's doing, waves past it. So it's those little things that, habits and approach that I think this team's going to have to figure out now that they're in real game action. Because in spring training, a lot of it is I'm going to go out there, I'm trying to get my good swing down, my timing. It doesn't matter, okay? But now these are real games. You can't take a spring training mentality into real games.
Yeah.
In the regular season.
I think the over-aggression is a really good point of, we know this is a team that wants to get contact. This is a team that wants to put the ball in the play, and they have been, but they have also been striking out a lot. They're around middle of the pack right now. They struck out 30 times against the Marlins in this series, and they have only drawn 5 walks. And another big part of that over-aggression is that on opening weekend, 2 of the Marlins' 3 starting pitchers went 7 innings and threw under 100 pitches.
Yeah.
And then that's not really a thing that you see on opening weekend of guys going past like 5 or 6 innings, let alone just kind of mowing them down.
Yeah. Or like, you'll see guys like still making that transition into the regular season of over aggression, and I'm going to swing, I'm going to make contact. And that's what we've always talked when the Rockies talk about, we got to get more contact. Yes, but it needs to be good contact. You're not trying to get contact just for contact's sake. No, Luis Arias is a good contact hitter, but he beats a lot of stuff into the ground. Now, he finds ways to get hits, but he's making contact, wasting pitches, but he's making contact just for contact's sake a lot of the time. For the Rockies, it's it's got to be that better contact, swing at good pitches. No, and I think that's the big thing. It's drawn walks. Like you can't be so over aggressive that you're neglecting the ability to draw walks.
Yeah,
And
and the only guy who's really drawing walks right now is TJ Rumfield.
mhm. And that's because that's part of his repertoire.
And he has struck out. We're not going to see his incredible spring training where he struck out just 2 total times in all of spring training. That's not going to be, repeatable. But at the same time, he's already putting the ball in play. He's got 3 strikeouts, yes, but he's also got 2 walks. He got his first big league home run. He's got a couple other hits versus, the one that really surprises me is Jake McCarthy, who is just swinging at everything. And he struck out 4 times now to start the season. And that's not really what I expected from him, especially with what his repertoire is coming into this season.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's say what we always say, like you can take things from spring training with a grain of salt a lot of the time with some of these guys. And we're seeing that where Jake McCarthy is maybe being a little too antsy. He's trying to make things happen instead of do what you're doing in spring training. Just make good contact. Drop the bunt for a hit. Try to get on base, draw a walk. That's what we need from you. Instead, we're not looking for you to hit home runs. Like that's not what you do, dude. And so we're just seeing those old habits and no antsiness, I think, to the start of the season that the team just needs to take a step back. That offense, like, slow it down, okay? Just put the ball in play, base hits, and just simplify the approach. Don't
Yeah.
try to do too much.
And it's a shame because we're seeing guys like Braxton Fulford and Ryan Ritter who 2 at bats apiece, 2 strikeouts apiece. They're
Yeah.
just not getting the bat to the ball. And, there are some guys who I'm willing to call it just trying to find their groove and bad luck. Brenton Doyle, for example, 11 at bats, still hitless, but he's only struck out twice and he's drawn a walk. And he's made some decent contact. It just seems to be getting exactly to the glove of a defender every time. Brenton Doyle, right now, just to start, I'm not super worried about.
Isn't that what happened to him like at the start of last year too? Before he
And
got injured.
yeah, and he had some other parts during the season where that happened as well. So with Doyle, at the very least, he's not flailing. He's waiting for his pitches, and
Yeah.
he's a guy where all right, we'll give him a couple more games to round into shape. And same with Hunter Goodman. Hunter Goodman has struck out a few times, but he's putting the ball into play. He's getting base hits. The power will come with that. We know that that's going to happen. The other guy who I think is doing really well to start is Kyle Karros. Kyle Karros is getting his hits in, but we
Yeah.
need everyone on the team to be doing this. And when you've got so many people who are just being over aggressive, not taking their pitches, not drawing their walks, that's a problem. And I'm not
Yeah.
crazy. I can't, go like, oh, all is lost, all hope is lost immediately because it's the first series of the game. It's not even April yet. But what I do want to see is things starting to click towards the end of April, beginning of May, because by then you've now had all of spring training in a couple months to start getting that new hitting philosophy installed. What are you going to do with it?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what probably the biggest thing for me. Like we always talk about pitching, and always so much focus is being put on pitching, but the hitting has been awful for the Rockies for several years now, just as bad as the pitching. Now, this is a team that struggled. There's a reason they have that negative differential, run differential last year. It's because this offense cannot score runs, especially on the road. And it's not. It's like, oh well, they can't hit home runs on the road. They don't need to. Like there's Hunter Goodman, over half his home runs were on the road last year. Like it's possible to hit on the road. No, I think we make too much of it. Oh, they can't hit away from Coors Field. Yes, they can. It's when you have that simplified approach of making good contact, that plays no matter what elevation you're playing at. And that's what we're struggling with is they're not picking up the timing. Pitchers now aren't working on things. They're trying to do everything perfect, opposing pitchers. And your cap to the Marlins. Like, they had some good pitchers they had to face in this series. Like, that was not some pushovers that they faced in this series of starting pitchers. Like, there's the reason the Marlins have some promising things happening for them. But the Rockies' preparation and the approach is so lacking, especially on the road. And yeah, it's the first series, so like you're saying, don't don't sound the alarm bells like all hope is lost. We're going 0-162. Like, no, they got to settle in and make that transition still.
Yeah, and at the very least, all of these games were close.
Yeah,
and I have a pretty different feeling about how these next couple games in Toronto are going to go, because I remember Toronto coming to Colorado last year and stomping the ever-loving heck out of us, and the Blue Jays already lead the league by a hefty margin in strikeouts after their first series of the season. They have very good pitching staff, but at the same time, eventually you got to start settling in, and it doesn't really matter who your opponent is. And, I want to see them try and take pitches and try and learn things of, I don't want to call it I don't want to say the games don't matter, but for March and April here, honestly, think of it as an extended look at spring training of, you are still installing the hitting philosophy, the pitching philosophy, and getting things done. And honestly, the pitching overall has not been that bad to start the season. And I know that, the real trial by fire is going to come when they make it back to Coors Field later in the season, or later in
this
the
week.
season, next week. But for, each of the Rockies starting pitchers went 4 1/3, and had some trouble. I think the guy who struggled the most in terms of his command was Jose Quintana, 4 walks to 2 strikeouts. But they all sort of found a second gear as they were pitching, or just kind of eventually ran out of gas. Like, Lorenzen had thrown over 80 pitches when he got to the 5th inning on Saturday's game, and he was pretty clearly sort of running out of gas, and he gave up that home run, and that's a bummer. But overall, I think Lorenzen pitched well. I think Kyle Freeland pitched pretty well, especially for Kyle Freeland, who didn't really get a full spring training because he started the year a little bit injured. And it's going to be the second and third time through for the rotation that I'm really going to be keeping an eye out for. And also this first set at Coors Field coming up, and seeing how pitching goes in terms of the rotation.
Yeah. And I think the good word to describe all those starting pitching performances was just labored. They they threw a lot, and I think Quintana had thrown like 56 pitches through 2 innings on Sunday. So it's battling that command, find themselves, and it's part of it's too of they didn't have normal spring trainings. Quintana was in the WBC, so was Lorenzen. He only made the one start in the WBC. So everybody wasn't as crisp. They're not as stretched out. No, they do as much as they can, throwing in bullpens after their starts and whatnot. But still, the Rockies took a different approach to spring training, where guys aren't going to be as stretched out here to start the year. Now, we'll see how Tomoyuki Sagano does in his first outing, against a familiar opponent, and how long can he go? And same with Ryan Feltner. Like, everybody was dealing with something in one way or another during spring training that they're not all the way stretched out. So 4 1/3 in general, like, not a lot of damage, and even Lorenzen, he was close to having that 5 complete innings pretty easily, or on his way, before he gave up that 2-run homer to tie the game up. Like, everybody, they've pitched well enough to win games and put the Rockies in a chance to win those games. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And for Lorenzen, especially, he had the strikeout stuff working. Yeah. I think better than any other Rockies starter that we saw so far. 4 strikeouts, no walks, pounded the zone.
Well, he can hit 96, so that helps.
That's true. Quintana with his both Quintana and Kyle Freeland with their low 90s fastballs, versus Lorenzen can actually pump a little bit of heat. But then you've got the Rockies bullpen, and it's a shame because the bullpen was the reason the Rockies lost 2 of those 3 games. Jaden Hill gave up the losing run on Saturday, and it was Victor Vodnik who left a meatball of a changeup middle versus Owen Cassie for the walk-off home run on Sunday. But both of those pitchers still displayed good stuff. Victor Vodnik was aiming for the 4-out save. He got some pretty good strikeouts. He threw a changeup at one point that was 94.4 miles per hour.
Yeah, it's not a changeup. That's a fastball.
Yeah, at that point.
That's a
And
BP fastball.
and it's a shame because you look at all of the other guys, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with the general pitching performance. Like, yes, it stinks that Vodnik gave up that home run, and it stinks that Jaden Hill gave up that 1 earned run. But a lot of guys were excellent. Jimmy Herget, 2 appearances now, 2 innings, 3 strikeouts, and he looked excellent on Sunday. And Juan Mejia also looked really, really good. Zach Agnos had a scoreless outing with multiple strikeouts. And the guy who I really want to shout out is, you know what? Antonio Senzatela looked great coming out of the bullpen on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, not too shabby for old Senzi. And that's the thing. It's like with everybody involved, it's not being able to miss bats right now. You know, strikeouts, you need them. Or if you're not getting strikeouts, you got to get those ground balls. And the Marlins, they know how to play their ballpark. It's you got to make contact and just put it in play, and then get on base so you can steal bags and all this stuff. And then you get the guy with a big thumper. But for the Rockies, it was still just Vodnik. A lot of them, it's still trying to dial it in. You got to miss bats, and there was a lot of contact. Like Vodnik, it's a problem that he's had in the past too, where it just kind of starts to snowball where he can't miss bats because he's leaving it up over the plate. There's still growing pains and things they need to iron out, and we'll see what Alon Leishman can do with them all. But what do you think of the calling pitches from the dugout this series? I mean, our first look at it.
They've been very, what I think is funny is they've been very adamant, and I can't vouch on whether it's true or not, that they are not actually calling pitches from the dugout. It's that Alon Leishman is making signals as suggestions to the pitcher and the catcher and saying, here's what I think you should do, but you have free reign to call the game as you choose.
The pitcher has veto.
I don't know if that's actually the case.
It's he's calling the pitches, and they're like, okay, like I'm not going to second guess it in this moment.
I mean, it's one of those things where even since PitchCom, in recent years, there's been a lot less of seeing pitchers shake off signs and shake off signals of this, especially pitchers who, of course, your aces, your guys who, and your veterans, your guys who they know what they're doing, shut up and let me pitch kind of guys, versus, the Rockies don't really have a lot of pitchers like that. Maybe Lorenzen, but I think Lorenzen is going to be very willing to work with Leishman and like in calling his game. But it was really interesting. And honestly, I think Senzatela is a really good example of the things that this new pitching coaching staff is doing, because while he still kept falling into his old habit of throwing way too many fastballs, he looked different. And part of it's coming out of the bullpen. He's getting more velo on his fastball. He touched 99 today. But if you're just watching him pitch, he's got the increased offerings. He's got more pitches, but also the pitches that he had previously been throwing have more shape to them, have more movement to them, versus his problem's always been that fastball is a straight line right in the middle of the plate, and it's going to get demolished.
Mm-hmm. It's a straight line into the left or center field seats.
And, I think these improvements, and it's of course still very early, but these kinds of changes show that, the guys are working with this pitching staff, and the pitching staff is trying to work on things with individual players. And it's really just going to be we're going to wait and see how things go for the rest of them. Like I said, a lot of it's really going to come down to the second and third times through the rotation this season, the first showing at Coors, other stuff like that.
Yeah, pretty much. But hey, congrats, TJ Rumfield. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, first home run. Most guys got a hit. The problem is they just didn't really
Not enough of them
do
hits in a
anything with
row.
those hits. All the new guys had hits. Johnston, Rumfield, Castro, Julian, but then it's just not doing anything after that. That's the problem. And that's the thing the Rockies are really going to have to work on this year, because they can't just keep doing this where they're not getting, when they get on base, they're not scoring, and otherwise they're not getting on base.
Individuals doing their part, the team as a whole not.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, again, I want to see how things go in the next couple series. I think we're going to see Brenton Doyle probably start to turn things on here in the next few days. He is getting the bat to the ball. I think we're probably going to see, I think we see a Hunter Goodman home run here in the next series. I think he's going to uncork one. He's had a few that he's got some pretty good contact on.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's one of those ones. It's too early. And I went on and I vented a little bit in our writer's room, like, this stinks, losing stinks, I'm grumpy about it. But then you shake it off and go, all right, well, on to the next one.
It's like we talked about before. It's like, you got to set expectations. Like, what do we expect out of this year? Well, yeah, it would be nice to win, and we would like things to happen immediately. But unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yeah, like, if the Rockies start 0-6, that's not a huge surprise.
Nope. Here's a question before we move on to our final thing. Will the Rockies ever get to 500 again this year? They're 0-3.
Probably not, honestly. If we're talking about tempered expectations, I don't think the Rockies are, I don't think they even sniff 500 baseball this year.
We'll see.
But then again, my prediction for the Rockies record, I think I said it was going to be like 60-102 or something like that.
Watch, then they sweep the the Blue Jays somehow.
That'd be incredible. And also would very much mess with my expectations.
Tomoyuki Sagano throws 7 shutout innings.
Don't make me believe, gosh darn you. But that's the first series of the 2026 season. We got more Rockies baseball to talk about here on Affected by Altitude, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan, that's Skyler. And Skyler, not only have the Rockies started their season, so have the Triple-A Albuquerque Isotopes.
Isotopes.
These are
Good
Southwestern toppings.
Mm-hmm. It's true, they do. They are in the Southwest. But interesting assortment of new concession stands items.
Oh man, I am okay. Now you've got me thinking about they got a bunch of new stuff at Coors Field this year as well. And they got this hot dog. It's like a 2-foot long hot dog covered in green chili and macaroni and cheese. And they're like, oh, this is for people to share. And I'm just like, the heck it is. This is for me. But I'm really
share with the paramedics who come to get you when you have a heart attack eating it.
Yes, exactly. Do you guys want a bite of my hot dog? Sir, your blood pressure is dangerously high. The pizza donuts also look pretty good.
Good for
them. Maybe I just like food, which is true. But yeah, new concessions down in Albuquerque and lots of new faces down in Albuquerque as they had their opening series against the Oklahoma City Comets, which I'm still getting used to calling them because they were the OKC Dodgers for a long time. The other year, they were just the Oklahoma City Baseball Club while they were working out the rebrand. And now they are the Comets. And, perhaps unsurprisingly, they lost a few games to Oklahoma City. They usually do. But it's going to be really interesting to see what this club does, because the biggest new face down in Albuquerque is one Mr. Charlie Condon.
Mm-hmm. Friend of the show, Charlie Condon.
Friend of the
And
show, Charlie
hopefully make
Condon.
him a two-time friend of the show if he doesn't force his way up onto the big league roster.
And he might be doing that because so far he has a hit in every game, including today. And yesterday, he hit his first Triple-A home run, and then he did it again. So
Mm-hmm.
2 home runs yesterday. He's hitting over 400 currently. He's getting the job done and he's hitting well. And granted, this is exactly what you want to see because, the PCL in Albuquerque is such a hitter friendly environment. But my question for you, Skyler, is when, if at all, do we reach a point where the issue gets forced and Condon gets a call up?
I feel like no earlier than like middle of May, something like that, because this team has said time and time again, we're not going to rush guys up. No, we don't want to rush guys type of thing. Like when they're ready, they'll tell us, and then we can bring them up. So no, Condon, give him a good month because look what happened in the past. Of a Zach Veen started off really hot in AAA. Jordan Beck started off really hot in AAA. Kyle Karros was really hot in AAA. Get called up after a couple weeks and in AAA for their first bit, and then they really struggle and it doesn't pan out. So no, yeah, it's awesome that he does that. Let's see him continue to do that. No, give him time to breathe and settle in and get comfortable because AAA started the AAA season. It's kind of like the big leagues of guys just settling in. No, these are the spring training guys who weren't able to make it onto their big league roster. And so give him time. We don't need to rush him. No, when he's ready, he's ready. And we can let him have some time because we need to see what we have in the big league squad right now. No, you got Troy Johnson, you got TJ Rumfield. So now McCarthy and Beck. So you got to let things play out as they are now with the guys you have on the roster, the big league roster already.
Yeah. And they're clearly still working with him on, expanding his repertoire. He's already started a game in right field in addition to playing in first base, continuing what they were doing with him during spring training, which is, well, Rumfield earned the first base job, so we need to look more at what you can do. And they're doing the same for Cole Carrig as well. Cole Carrig has now started both at shortstop and center field for the Isotopes, and he's off to a pretty good start as well. And these are guys that, don't get me wrong, will force the issue at some point this season.
Yeah.
But even if the Rockies start 0-9 to start the year, the last thing you want to see is this new front office hit the panic button and start rushing guys up and going, we got to get these guys up here now. We got to try and right the ship because it doesn't matter right now.
Yeah. And it's same with fans too. People that were upset, the Rockies are sending Charlie Condon down, their top prospect. What are they doing? Like, no.
They're doing they're doing what they should be doing. And I learned my lesson on this last year, where remember last year how vocal I was about, the Rockies didn't put Veen and Dolander on the opening day roster. What are we even doing here? And how'd that go?
Mm-hmm.
How did rushing up any of these prospects go last year as things got increasingly more dire?
Yeah. And I think the thing that I noticed with AAA is you look at Albuquerque's roster and you look at how many guys are from outside of the organization who have big league experience, however little or as much as they have, and just look at what players are in AAA. It's not a bunch of prospects and then, we got a sprinkled in guy here and there that have played in the big. No, the majority of that roster is guys who are quality depth who can fill in as needed. But they're pretty much a Nicky Lopez, Chad Stevens, Ion Machine, Kyle McCann. A lot of those guys they have a big league experience. Maybe not a ton, but they have it for some of them. But you could more reliably call them up, like we talked about before, just the expendable type guys they're there as good depth for the big league roster. And because that's what would happen too in the past, Evan, is we're rushing guys up and there's holes that are being left in AAA. It's just thinning out your depth if you're having to hurriedly rush guys up the pipeline and you're leaving a wasteland in AAA. And then AA, your system suffers if it's not just a smooth flow of guys. We saw the that was the what we talked about before too in the past. We get the logjam at the bottom is really thin at the top of quality depth. I think that's a big thing we need to see from the Rockies, just a more seamless, just kind of like well-rounded pipeline of depth of okay, Condon's ready here. He can move up to the next level. Now we move guy from AA, move him up. That's what I noticed with AAA's. That depth and just the makeup of that team is a lot different than what it's been.
Yeah, and there are guys who, I think were a lot of fun to watch during spring training who are providing quality depth. Vimael Machine already has 4 walks this season.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think we're going to see lots of other guys who are going to continue to do well and potentially like I said, potentially force the issue at some point, or at least prove to be meaningful depth, because it's like you said, we don't want the panic moves. We don't want to move too quickly. You've got to sort of have the natural progression throughout the year, because there will be plenty of opportunities to call up guys and move things around. Somebody's going to get hurt at some point this season. We're not wishing it on anyone, but that is just what happens during a 162 game regular season. Somebody's going to get hurt. And we saw, Mickey Moniak and Tyler Freeman get hurt during spring training, and that paved the way for Troy Johnston to come up. And, what we might see, like, well, okay, what happens if Willie Castro gets hurt? Okay, well, here's an opportunity for Nicky Lopez or Vimael Machine, or we can shuffle things around. And I think that's also part of why the Rockies have really focused on the positional versatility for their depth this year, is to give them a much more smooth progression. Because I just can't stop thinking about last year when everybody was hurt in the middle infield and we were having to do a lot of weird stuff. We were having to go and get Alan Trejo back. We were having to do all these different things. And in the long term, it ended up being pretty bad for both the Isotopes and for the Rockies.
Yeah. Looking at, they had 15 players who have seen time in the major leagues on their roster. So that's over half their roster has guys who have been in the majors at some point, between guys that are in the organization and those that they brought in. Just 5 guys were making their AAA debut.
And you know what I really like about that, though, is that we are not bringing in like the aging journeyman. Like, yeah, we had Brett Sullivan, who's in his 30s, and some of the pitchers are a little bit older, but a lot of these position players are still in their mid 20s. They're 26, 27. They're not guys who you're going to go, oh, it's just some over the hill journeyman veteran. It's no, this is a guy who's still relatively young and could potentially still even develop into at least a big league contributor. Maybe not an all-star or anything like that, but a guy you have on your roster and you're comfortable having. And it's the experimentation of, you brought in a bunch of different guys from all over the league, from all over baseball, honestly, and just seeing what you can get out of them.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. I even think like when I'm making, minor league rosters, signings in like MLB The Show or something, it's like, yeah, I'm looking for those guys that are kind of borderline of, well, he's older, he's in his mid to late 20s. He's been around, he has a little bit of time in the big leagues, but he's cheap and he could still be effective in some form. Like, the Isotopes had Owen Miller last year. Like, that wasn't a bad person to have around. Like, still kind of relatively young in a sense. But it's, you're getting like old guys, or just like guys are just trying to latch on because they have nowhere else to go. No, like any one of them could be contributors and whatnot. Like, and I think these are guys that are buying into the idea of what the Rockies are hoping to do, and hoping, for that chance of, okay, when the call comes, I'm going to be ready.
Yeah, exactly. And, that honestly, that line can go pretty far. And not everyone is going to turn into a diamond in the rough. Wow, this guy was an 18th round pick, and
Yeah.
look what we managed to turn him into. But, there is always going to be a role for just a solid baseline guy. You
Mhm.
know, the fact that, and this is not meant to be a denigration of him, but the fact that Garrett Hampson is still trucking along in baseball, and he's not had the prettiest career, and especially last year where he ended up he ended up having to sign a minor league contract with the Cincinnati Reds to start this season, but he's still puttering along, and that at some point he's going to get called up and he's going to get big league playing time out of necessity, and you can do a lot worse than that.
There will always be a need for the baseball journeyman who can come in, he can play for a week, and then he gets sent back down or he goes and finds a job somewhere else.
Yeah,
There will always be a spot for a guy, like even just hyper focused. Where Garrett Hampson, he can run fast, he can play some decent defense around the diamond at places. Okay, we need somebody to fill in for a week and a half. Let's go bring him in.
yeah, could do a whole lot worse. And the Rockies have shown that they, have been keeping an eye out on these kind of journeymen, even for guys on the roster. Who I would describe as a journeyman at this point is both Michael Lorenzen and Jose Quintana. Jose Quintana has worn 9 different uniforms throughout his career. Lorenzen is on his 7th team, but even though neither of them are necessarily going to be all stars or leading the Cy Young race or whatever, you don't necessarily need that from them. You need just to go out and play some pretty solid big league baseball.
Mm-hmm. I know we're running short on time here, but probably one guy really to shout out to from this weekend of playing ball down in Albuquerque, Tanner Gordon had a pretty good start. The best start by a Rockies pitcher in the whole organization over the weekend.
Yeah, the pitching in Albuquerque this weekend was not
It's
great for a lot of different guys. Adam Lasky had a very rough start today. 5 walks, 4 earned runs, and it's not always pretty. And pitching in the PCL is hard. But Tanner Gordon, a 5-inning start where he only gave up 1 unearned run, struck out 5, walked 2. That'll do just dandy. And like we mentioned earlier, you had Seth Halverson come in and get the save. And then another guy who I would like to shout out is Wellington Herrera, who welcome to Albuquerque, kid. 1 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 3 strikeouts, no walks, no earned runs.
not too shabby.
And I am, I love Beef. I'm very excited for him to eventually make his debut, and to see him go out and work a scoreless inning and a third in a hitter friendly environment is exactly what you want to see.
Yeah. Good old Isotopes.
Yeah. It's always tough because when you're a fan of minor league baseball, you still want to see your teams win. And the fans in Albuquerque have not been treated to a winning team in quite some time. But in the grand scheme of things, the wins matter a whole lot less in minor league baseball than the player contributions and player development. It's basically the opposite of big league ball, where you got to have the whole team working together to get the wins, and the wins are important.
Mm.
One more quick minor league thing we can talk about. Our high A Spokane Indians put out their opening day roster. They're going to be starting here in a little bit as well. Not a ton of crazy names on there going to be playing at Avista Stadium to start the year in terms of the biggest of the big name prospects, but some friends of the show like Jackson Cox finally moving up from high A, from low A Fresno to high A Spokane. Max Ballou is going to be on the Indians to start the year. Guys like Ronier Hernandez and Kelvin Hidalgo. Ethan Hedges is going to start the year in Spokane. And some other pitching prospects. You've got Antoine Jean. You've got Yohanir Herrera, finally back from Tommy John surgery. And my man from the University of Washington, it's Stuart Fleslin III, will also be on the Indians to start the year.
Yeah. Which points to Ethan Holiday starting the year in low A Fresno again.
which I think is the right move. And I think
Yeah.
the corresponding move is one of the other young top prospects in the Rockies system, and Robert Calaz is starting the year in Spokane. And he's a guy who got an extra extended amount of time in Fresno. And I think that's the right call for Holiday. You got to remember, he's only 19. He played no college ball. He played exclusively high school ball. He's got a lot of learning and developing to do. They do not need to fast track him up to Spokane or to Hartford or whatever to start the season.
Yeah, which puts him even more on our radar. We'll get him eventually.
Oh, and if he's in Fresno, Tim, if you're listening.
He's probably not listening.
Probably not. Hey, maybe
but he'll read our email.
But yeah, keep an eye out for the rest of the minor league season starting here over the next few weeks. Triple-A Albuquerque will continue to play, and the Rockies season officially in full swing. And we'll have every step of the way for you here on Affected by Altitude. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of us two, I don't know, gluttons for punishment.
Sure.
But thank you so much for listening. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on the Twitter at Skyler Timmons or on Blue Sky, yes, Timmons13WSKY.social, and then writing over at purpleroad.com. Wednesday Rock Piles.
You can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlane27.bsky.social. Would love to hear from you. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If it's got podcasts, it's got us on it. You can also find us on social media, including YouTube, where you can find the video version of the show at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Fun stuff.
All righty. Well, when next we chat, the Rockies will play their first baseball games at Coors Field for the 2026 season, and we'll have more to talk about. So we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for listening. And Skyler, how about you hit him with it?
Fare thee well. This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.